All right, good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Faye. We once in a while bring you a conversation about things that are really important that are happening in our country. They couldn't be anything more important than this. Before I get started, a quick request. Remember, we have a news bulletin that goes out at 9 o'clock every day. Do share it with people who don't know that we're doing this work. Share our videos, ask them to subscribe to our channel. It would really help to have a larger audience for the work that we are doing. So I place that request in your hands. Let's get straight to it. The central government announced yesterday a list of important decisions to do with the vaccination drive in India. A lot of the details of that announcement got lost in the one major headline announcement, which was that everybody above the age of 18 will become eligible on the 1st of May. And everybody was celebrating that, but the fine print may have gotten lost a little bit. To begin with, let's just look at that major headline announcement, right? Everybody above the age of 18 is now eligible, but hang on, aren't we facing a shortage of supply? Isn't that where all of the problems started from? We are facing a shortage at this point, and India is currently facing its worst wave of COVID. There's a shortage of oxygen, of beds, of ICUs, of other drugs. How does it help to actually expand the demand when we really need to expand the supply? Remember, also the age groups of 18 to 45 is the largest demographic in our country right now. So it's not just a doubling of demand. It could be a lot more than that. In fact, today's news tells us that in Mumbai, out of the 120 vaccination centers, 66 were closed because of a lack of supply. Several people telling me that people were getting turned away. Senior citizens going in for their second dose were getting turned away. So there's an issue there, but let me take you through the other announcements that were made. Vaccine manufacturers will now, starting the 1st of May, give 50% of everything they manufacture to the central government. And the remaining 50% doses will go to state governments and the open market, it says. Vaccine manufacturers will have to make an advance declaration of the price of that 50% supply that's going to state governments and the open market before the 1st of May. Now, what is this open market? Based on this price, all state governments, all private hospitals, all industrial establishments, etc., would be able to procure the vaccine doses directly from the manufacturer. Private hospitals will have to procure their supply of the vaccine exclusively from that 50% earmarked for entities other than the stuff coming to the central government. The private vaccination providers will need to transparently declare their set of vaccination price and eligibility through this channel. Eligibility, effectively, I don't know how much weight that holds because everybody above the age of 18 is eligible. Vaccinations will continue as before in the Government of India vaccination centers, free of cost for the eligible population, which is healthcare workers, frontline workers, and people above the age of 45. So here, I have a question of whether the government's free of cost vaccination will in fact vaccinate people above the age of 18, or is it required that above the age of 18 will have to pay? The center has also, from its share, will allocate vaccinations to states and union territories based on a criteria on the extent of infection, performance, and wastage that will have a sort of weightage on it. And the second dose for existing priority groups, which is above the age of 45, healthcare workers, frontline workers, whenever it is due, would be given priority, for which specific focus strategy will be announced. Okay, questions that we're going to ask today. Do we have enough supply right now to meet this fresh demand? If states have to access out of the 50% from that same supply, will that start a bidding war among the state governments? Will some states suffer because of it? Either states that don't have as much money, or smaller states, or states of certain political parties, will that suffer? Is that fair to the citizens of that state? Private hospitals will have to scramble now to access the vaccine. Effectively, does this cut off free supply, only to government hospitals now and no longer to private hospitals, doubling the demand when there is a scarcity, and a bunch of other questions. We'll also take questions from our audience, but we've put together a panel that I'm quite frankly quite proud of. There's Murali Neelakantan, who is a super lawyer when it comes to matters specifically to do with healthcare and pharmaceuticals. Dr. Mangesh Pate is the chairperson of the IMA Hospital board and a member of the COVID task force. Dr. Rakesh Mishra, Director for the Center for Cellular Molecular Biology, and Ashish Kulkarni, who is an Assistant Professor at the Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. If I had only one complaint, is that I would like to have more women on the panel, but here we are. You just have to count me for today. Let's get straight to it. The question, my first question of more than doubling demand at a point when we have such low supply. And I want to take that question to Dr. Mangesh Pate. Dr. Pate, I'm sure you, like everybody else, is buried with requests of various things that we're in shortage of at this point, most of which we can do very little to help. But to do with the vaccine, do you see this as a positive move? Should we have been increasing supply first?
No, definitely. If you say, I hope I'm audible. Yeah.
Yes.
See, this is a definitely positive move. There is no doubt about it. No one should have doubt about it, basically. And if you recall, it was around, say, 3 weeks back, on 4th or 5th of April, we had raised this demand and we had urged the government that all citizens above 18 years of age, this vaccine should be thrown open. Okay. Now, there are a few reasons behind this demand. Remember, it has not come just out of the fluke. First, if you see the difference between the first wave of the COVID and the second wave of the COVID, right now, what you are seeing is nearly 28% of the population is a pediatric population being affected, first thing. And pediatric, I do not mean below 12 years of age. Of course, there are cases of, even I have seen the latest, the case of a 10 months also, 10 months old also, that I categorically said. But maximum number of people getting affected are from the age group of 15, 16 years up to 35 years. This younger age group has started getting affected, and it is covering nearly 28% of the total new cases. That's why it was very necessary that we must come down with the eligible age group for the COVID vaccination. This is very important. And second, most important reason is that if you note the history over last 100 years or so, vaccines, they have proved as a triumph of the mankind for the victory over the viruses, bacteria, and various diseases. And same principle, if we apply to this current new pandemic, what we are facing through, definitely it is going to be a savior for the world. And that principle, according to that principle, earliest possible, the maximum population getting covered, it is going to be beneficial.
But I agree with you completely, Dr. Pate. I agree that the vaccine is our solution out of this. But my question was, going into the problem that we're facing right now, the problem is of a lack of supply. Have we solved that problem before we increase demand?
Well, see, Government of India, while declaring such a, if you just take a 1 month back before this decision, they had gone for eligible age group, they had gone from the 60 years to 45 years. Okay, yes. 45 years plus. Now they have gone 18 years plus. And definitely, when central government has come out with this such a positive response, they must have thought of this procurement or delivery or disbursement, whatever it may be. In addition, I will like to quote here, you have quoted the details what central government has come out with. Honorable Prime Minister has made a specific arrangement of 4,500 crores for augmentation of the production of these vaccines. This is today's announcement government has come out with. And definitely, he himself has spoken with the Serum Institute in Pune and other Bharat Biotech. And they are also trying to triplicate the production what they are right now into. And we are always reading the news that how the Adar Poonawalla definitely is speaking with the US president and he's demanding certain things from the states. And all three, through these measures, I am sure that this production will be augmented. And I hope that our population, our citizens, shall get a continuous supply of this vaccination. But as far as this move is concerned, it is definitely a welcome and positive move.
I just want to point out that as far as India's population is concerned, Like I said, a large chunk of our population is in that age group of 25 and below, or 35 and below. 65% of the population is 35 and below. Let me take the same question then to Murali. Murali, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Your response to what Dr. Pate has said, that the government has taken a bold decision to open this up to everybody. It was a necessary decision. It was being, several people had asked for this to be done. So it is a very positive thing, and we're quite right to celebrate it. But are there concerns right now of how this will be actually fulfilled or how it will be executed?
Faye, I hear what the doctor is saying. The issue has, as you've noted, and we've discussed in December, that the issue is going to be supply. We also considered this issue of two markets in December when we had this discussion. And we'd said then that it would be a terrible idea to have two markets. We expected that demand would be ramped up slowly, especially because we hadn't planned supplies to be ramped up proportionately. So we know that we are going to have a supply crisis. The government's admitted that there is a supply crisis. None of the money, the 4,500 crores, is going to produce capacity the next couple of months. So we have this huge mismatch for the next few months. It would have been helpful if the government had said, we've given this 4,500 crores and we're going to get 200 million doses or 500 million doses in the next 3 months. That would have really helped. At the moment, we don't know what the supply increase is going to be. Neither Bharat Biotech nor Serum Institute have told us that they're going to be able to triple capacity in the next 3 months. So there is going to be a clear mismatch of demand and supply. I leave Ashish to explain how this works, but to me, the big challenge in this whole process is going to be two markets. As soon as we have at least two markets, Ashish and I think we're going to have more than 30 markets, but we think that there's going to be at least two markets. And let me explain that before Ashish gets into it. Even if we had just two prices from the suppliers, which is a public price for government and a private price, each of those entities that's going to actually provide the service will create one more price, which means that each hospital is now going to create a price. So you're potentially going to have each state having its price, each hospital having a price. So you're going to have multiple markets with multiple price. Now, that to me is a scary proposition. In the past, when we've seen two prices, just two prices, a public price and a private price, we've seen chaos. There's black marketing, there is diversion of products from the public market to the private market. Obviously, there is an incentive to sell in the private market at 5 times the price that they're selling in the public market. So it just is very difficult for me to understand, not being an expert in economics, but having seen this happen for so many years now with two markets in a limited supply with basically a monopolist supplier with a fragmented market. I can't find words to describe what chaos we're going to have.
Before I bring in, obviously Ashish will continue to bring in the economic point of view. I just want to ask you this. Now we received a report on PTI saying Bharat Biotech is going to boost its production to 700 million doses a year. Now, its current production is 10 million doses a year. It's doing about 1 crore, and it's going to go up to 70 crores.
Correct.
It says step by step and things like that. Wouldn't that solve the problem, though?
It will solve the problem next year.
Okay.
So with all of these, this is the point we were making in December as well, that had we planned production to be ramped up to keep track with supply, perhaps it would have been very credible to do it. But what we've done is increased demand tremendously. So we've gone from 60 to 45, 45 to 80, which is 1 billion of our population, without having 2 billion doses. I'm not saying we need 2 billion doses today, but we need 2 billion doses in the next couple of months. Otherwise, we'll have this mismatch.
Okay. I have to keep stopping in the middle of this conversation. Every time someone says this on the chat window that you can still get the virus after getting the vaccine for the nth time, the vaccine doesn't prevent you from testing positive. What the vaccine does is make sure that you don't get very, very sick. and don't wind up in hospital and don't need a ventilator or oxygen. So you test positive, you're almost asymptomatic or very mild symptoms, you don't get sick. That's the point of the vaccine. That's what is trying to be avoided. And I will say it as many times as I'm asked. Murali, go ahead.
If it helps, the CDC is just in the US has just put out numbers of the 75 million people who've had full vaccination. There are 260 which have required hospitalization, and none of them has been in an ICU or a ventilator. So everybody who's scared, 75 million, 260 in hospital without a ventilator, without an ICU. That is the data we have. So everybody who thinks, oh my God, I will take the vaccine and fall ill, this is the data we have. It's credible data from the US regulator. So there's absolutely no basis for people to reject the vaccine or feel hesitant about it. It's in everybody's interest. It's in your family's interest to take it. So we've been saying that from the time we know vaccines have come on this show.
Well, Ashish Kulkarni, the question about these various markets that are being formed, right? So to go over what I said, the supply will be split into two halves. There will be the half that goes to the central government and the other half for which state governments, private hospitals from all across the country and any other organization, whether it's an industrial law. So for example, let's say a Mahindra and Mahindra or a Reliance decides to vaccinate their entire employee workforce, that's where that same chunk is going to come from. What sort of economics will that lead to?
I honestly wish I knew the answer to that question, in the sense that I really don't know what economic model fits what India is going to start to see in the next couple of months. And what I mean by that is, it's all economic models at their heart are fairly simple. There's supply and there's demand. And as you correctly pointed out, right now, we have huge constraints on supply. The real problem that the more I think about it, the more worried I get about it, is what happens when you have, as you mentioned, a whole variety of different demand curves, so to speak, across the length and breadth of this country. So you're going to have Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Bihar, Jharkhand, every state going up, in a sense, not just against each other, but against a whole host of private players as well, with prices that are not clearly defined, in fact, have been completely liberalized. And when they say that the prices are going to be set in a transparent manner, we don't know what that transparent manner is just yet. Transparent how? Decided by whom? Do we get some idea of what their costs are and then some kind of profit margin on top? Or is it just a separate announcement that these are the prices and this is how you're going to have to play? In fact, if anything, Faye, my questions are probably more than yours. How the economics of this particular move play out are gloriously unclear. I suspect not just to me, but to everybody who's trying to analyze this market. But the major point that I just cannot begin to wrap my head around is why we would want to fragment demand in such a scenario. And what I mean by that is, it would be much better if we had one central procurement policy. Sure, distribution can be and perhaps should be split up. But to have 30 different states and God knows how many private entities competing against each other to raise prices of a vaccine that is already likely to prove far too expensive for the vast majority of the people in the country, it doesn't fit any economic model that I am aware of.
Let me also bring in Dr. Mishra here. Dr. Mishra, there is an interview that the health minister of Chhattisgarh has given to the Hindu, where he's basically said that this will lead to chaos. It will also lead to stronger states wrestling out the smaller or the weaker states. Now, he's not quantified whether strong is in size or in access to funds. We know that there are some states that have more money than other states. Also, I must remind you, Chhattisgarh reported 7 deaths every 1 hour, according to the Free Press Journal last, there's a story that came out 20 hours ago. So it's fairly scary in Chhattisgarh as well. Do you expect, now throw in private hospitals, who are legendary for billing and for inflating prices and things like that. Do you think that it's going to be chaos? Or will this just basically, and I know that there are some people who have said that if someone can pay, let them pay and get out of the way. So they're no longer blocking or they're no longer competing with the people who can't pay, which the government will look after.
I think in this I'm the least qualified to answer what you asked. I mean, the simplest thing, the best model will be that everybody gets vaccine, government makes arrangement and people don't have to pay. You do a vaccine Yes, correct. Extra, don't be involved into payment business. So, I mean, uh, vaccine wastage is what we are seeing. It's not they are throwing. If the vaccine wastage means is going to somebody else who are not eligible or not supposed to be there. Right? That's what is wastage. Wastage is not. So we have a peculiar system where we discover new ways of bringing some kind of equilibrium that everybody is happy. Uh, but one thing also we should keep in mind that the current price with which government is forcing, in fact, arm twisting the companies to sell is not a viable option. I've spoken to them, particularly Bharat Biotech, their production cost is much higher than this. So we were just simply going to dry and they will find one excuse or other, they will stop production. So sooner you have to bring in some revenue generation for them. And this probably is one way of doing. I mean, I can tell you that this vaccine whole thing is going like, I don't know how dynamic the situation is. 6-7 months ago, including me, we were doubting whether there will be any vaccine. So far, never has been that, and so on and so forth. End of the year, sometime vaccines came, and even our government says, okay, we will accept Bharat Biotech and Serum Institute vaccine. And many of us were so concerned that this should not be done. This is not a vaccine. This is... Then we are asking, so whether there will be vaccine, is it this vaccine? And now we are asking, where is the vaccine? It's the same material. It's not, nothing much has changed. So it's so dynamic. Everything is going in such a fast forward way that I do not know whether this government take decision that is taking in all fairness, with all consideration and input, how much of them will bear the fruit. But so far, I would say that by and large, I mean, there will always be some problems when you take decision in such a heterogeneous situation, when state are saying we are poor, somebody is rich, and so on. The motto is generally to save life first, and so try to vaccinate those in the beginning. I think we have done with that, and now the economics more comes more into picture. But we should not link the current crisis to immediate vaccination thing. This wave that we are seeing, this is not going to be dealt by vaccine. The vaccine effect will come after much later. So we have missed probably the vaccination story, and that's why the people are that bad and so many large number, I think. So we have to have a proper, well thought strategy that those who need, they must get, whether they are able to pay or not. I don't know how. I mean, we have all kinds of public distribution system, card, and many other things. And my concern is, no matter what policy government makes, we have so much of creativity that we'll find a loophole to even Aadhaar card or Niradhar card, whatever it is, we find a way of bypassing and doing things. So it is very, very challenging. But I think end of the day, there is a actually, before the vaccination began, we were thinking that there are some 30 crore doses in stock by these. I don't know where they went, because government has probably donated 6-7 crore, not more than that. And
6 crores, yeah. 6.3 crores.
64 million. Yeah.
count what has been done, there should be a lot of vaccine around. So I don't know, or maybe I'm missing something. And then every month there will be 5-6 crore at least production happening. So, and let's hope that Johnson and Johnson and Sputnik will come in coming weeks. Okay, Johnson and Johnson is yet to be approved, but don't know. But Sputnik is there, so supply will slowly build up. I think in a couple of weeks we will have better situation of supply. But
Yes.
I agree. On the one hand, while I think that opening private and allowing free market pricing or something of that sort probably is needed for vaccine companies, because after all, they have to survive and build capacity and do something. But I do not know how effective it will be in vaccination. But vaccination is not really a drug or something. This we have to control pandemic, and therefore whatever we do, we should try and get largest number in shortest possible time vaccinated only. Because if we delay too much, these vaccines might become less effective, and we may lose the plot in a different way.
Okay, let me ask, the legal question here. If I bring Murali back in, at the end of the day, it can be argued that the access to vaccination equals in some way to the right to life and the right to equality to all of us. Now, irrespective of which state I live in, or how much money I have, or which private hospital I can go to, and how much money I can put on the table in order to buy the vaccine. Technically, all of us are equal in the eyes of the law, and I should be in the eyes of the government as well. How do we reconcile that fundamental idea in our constitution with what is happening now?
Oh, we can't. And that's one of the fundamental issues with the policy. What we are now saying is, depending on where you live, how much money you have, you will then be part of a lottery. So if you're rich, it doesn't matter where you live. You will get it from, as Dr. Mishra said, from wastage. Even if you're ineligible, you've all got vaccinated because that has been written down as wastage. So that is the diversion. We've already seen diversion. We're going to see more of it now. So with a limited supply, what you're going to see is the rich are going to get plenty. They're going to jump the queue. And even those, for example, who have been unable to access it, let's say there are 60-year-old people and older who have been unable to access it so far because they just live far away, there are no vaccine supplies in their district hospitals, any of that, you're going to take it away from them. So they're not going to get any more. So we're leaving those out. Likewise with the migrant population, where are they going to get their vaccines from? So with a limited supply, if you're going to create other markets, you're going to have people jumping the queue. It would have been a different story, and I would have had a lot more sympathy for the system if we had a lot more supply. So if supply was not an issue, then you could bifurcate markets and say, hey, let's have a market. Let's take paracetamol, for example. You can have 20 prices for paracetamol. People can buy paracetamol in various different ways, different brands. There is not a problem. There is no scarcity. So somebody buying paracetamol doesn't take away my paracetamol. Whereas with the vaccine, the rich will take away vaccines from the poor. And that is the inequitable part. And to me, that is the real worrying part about creating these markets, that we are not equal anymore. We're basically saying there is no justice. If you're rich, you jump the queue, you will get the beds, you will get the vaccines, you will get health. The equity of this is, again, very predictable. We discussed this in December. And for those who are listening, please read the book, Michael Sandel, What Money Can't Buy. And one of the great answers there is things like public health are public goods. Money shouldn't be able to buy you public health. Money shouldn't be able to get you ahead on these things. Money shouldn't be able to buy you this strange sense of merit. And so, there is good examples for why we shouldn't do this. Nowhere in the world are we doing it. Even in the most free market countries, like the United States, it is universal free vaccination. There is no price to be paid. You just walk in and get yourself vaccinated. The rich, the poor, everybody are getting it. So even in the most free market of countries, we've gone for universal healthcare. So it's really shocking that with the right to health and supposedly a socialist country, we're willing to break all that and do something we've never done before. All immunization, successful in India until now, has been on the basis of universal free vaccination. Why are we breaking that mold? And to just respond in a minute to Dr. Mishra, we have an interview with Mr. Poonawalla, where he said that they make an adequate profit on the price to government. What he wants to do is make a super profit. Those are his words, not mine. So anyone having sympathy for a billionaire monopolist in a pandemic, please sit down.
So I'll just like to add that I agree that the Serum Institute vaccine is viable in this, but what I understand is Bharat Biotech is not. Their production is such that it costs several fold more the price, so they'll not be able to break even in that. That's what they say, and experts agree that their production is different because they use cell culture to grow the virus, and which is straight away the vaccine for them. So but even all of us saying that it's not sustainable for a very long time, and I that's what he said.
Okay, so I do want to ask Dr. Pate for a clarification. And I was reading this out of an article in the Mint that said basically the government had said vaccine will continue as before. in Government of India vaccination centers free of cost for eligible population, which is healthcare, frontline workers, and people above the age of 45. Does this mean that the Government of India's free vaccination will not be available to ages 18 to 45, Dr. Pate?
See, all stalwarts here, they have stated very valid points. First point which has been discussed here is a supply distribution chain. This is number one, which is questioned. Okay. Secondly, the economics behind Murali sir has stated very properly. Even Bishra sir has said, and Ashish also, they have got queries regarding the economics behind this.
Yes,
and
yes.
third, most important, is a right to life or right to health, whatever we may say. Okay, these are three important points. The answers are, number one, we are in the midst of the pandemic, first thing. Whatever medicines, you may say remdesivir or these two vaccines, they all have got emergency use approval. The meaning of EUA is that it is given on emergency basis to save the mankind. Very simple, in the simpler terminology. Okay. Now, as the production, we have been assured that it will be tripled and the supply will be smooth. Definitely, I agree with Murali sir. There will be some teething troubles in the beginning, but definitely, I am hopeful that it will be smoothened and entire citizens of this country will get vaccination. That I am very much hopeful about. Otherwise, government will not go after such a major decision. It's a very huge decision. Remember that. Second thing, the queries about economics behind this are absolutely valid, but kindly I will like to put forth in front of you all here one parallel example. What is the problem in our country as far as the economics regarding this pharma industry? It comes under the pharma industry, obviously. When production is there, whatever cost is there, how much is selling cost, and how much cost is there at the end use. Okay. If you take an example of any simple injectable antibiotic in our country, and one XYZ person buys in the Jammu and Kashmir for one cost, there is a different cost in the city of Mumbai, and there is a very different cost in the southern state of India. This is point number one. Point number two, that one product is being produced by 10 different companies, and they are putting the different pricing for the same product. I will give you one simple example over here, and you all will agree with me immediately. There is one antibiotic called as the meropenem in our country, which is used for the infections various. It is a higher antibiotic. There are good companies which are selling this product across the counter for around 600 rupees a vial. Same product is being sold by few companies to rupees 3,200 per vial. There is no difference in the product. Unless our government minimizes this huge difference, it is going to be chaos as far as economics is concerned. And that is where your point stands valid. So as far as these two vaccines and opening up 50% of the stock to the states, to the private stakeholders, whoever it may be, for the price, whatever prices are decided, government has to see to it that there has to be uniformity in the pricing, number one, and there has to be proper capping on the prices.
Dr. Pate, the government has not said anything about a cap, but it said that the companies will have to declare the price beforehand.
Before the 1st of May.
And will that price then be steady, or can they increase it at some point?
This statement, I do not agree. It is a half-hearted, remember that. What I have said, it should be capped and should be uniform. These two things have got a very different meaning, and it adds something to which this half statement which has come from the government. Right to health and right to life, what he has said, if you want to deliver to every citizen of the country, uniformity in the cost is a must. Capping on the cost is a must, and that only and only government can do. Remember that. We are asking.
Yes.
We are asking government of India since 2013, 8 years. There is one simple slogan, remember that. One country, one drug, one price. Simple.
Yes.
If you apply that, entire problem. Let me tell you, there is a lot of chaos regarding the business module healthcare in our country for last 2.5 decades.
Yes.
The root cause of the business module lies in this slogan. If you apply this slogan, let me assure you, 40% of the healthcare cost will be nullified. And every citizen of this country, poorest of the poor, will be benefited because of that. But unfortunately, this valid demand, it is falling on the deaf ears since last 8 to 9 years.
Murali, comment on the same thing. One drug, one price, one country. This is obviously flying in the face of that idea. Also, when effectively giving these two vaccines now private market sales authorization, it's a full clearance. Has all of the data come in? Have all the necessary sort of steps been followed in order to now give them the permission to sell? Because does this still qualify as an emergency usage authorization, as Dr. Pate said?
Well, it seems like now it's a full authorization. It's no longer emergency use because now it's going to be in private sales. So far, the government's policy has been that whenever a drug is launched for marketing and sale in the market, you need a specific approval of the price. And so far, the government policy has been one company, one drug, one price, which means that a company having a drug can only have one price for it in India. So it is not possible for a company to have a drug, let's say paracetamol, and have 10 different prices in India. So that has been the policy so far, that you can't have one company with one drug which has 20 different prices or 10 different prices. You get price approval, and that is one price. Now, what doctor is saying is there are different companies producing the same drug at different prices. That's not the issue here. The issue is, can the same vaccine produced by the same company have different prices to the end user?
And it will.
As the government policy is so far, the government has said no for every other drug. So you can't have a company having different prices next to its factory. Let's say it's produced in Goa, it has X price, and then it's far away in Sikkim, it has a different price, even though the cost is different. The government does not approve multiple prices for the same drug, and it is for a good reason, so that you don't move across borders and arbitrage the price. So you don't buy it cheap and sell it expensive. It is exactly to avoid this that the government's policy makes sense from an economist standpoint. Now it doesn't.
So effectively, let me understand this. This would create a massive black market, right? Because while the government, in all good intention, will say, hey, here is 50% of this production that we are now going to give for free in government hospitals for our priority group, the people who need it more than everybody else. But the thousands of people in that chain who receive it, who pass it, who load it, who unload it, who take it to the respective, there will be constant leakage. Things will disappear and they will be sold at thousands of rupees, hundreds and thousands of rupees to the private players who are willing to pay that money. That is the issue here. Okay?
We have seen it, and we've seen it. If you look at the history of institutional purchases by government, others will bear me out on it. The government procures for institutions, for ESI, for some others. The amount of leakage from that into the private market is legendary in this country. So we've already seen that happening. We've seen it with other goods where there is a differential pricing, where there is smuggling across borders. We've seen all of this before, which is why the government policy of one company, one drug, one price became standard. To break that policy now, it is just very difficult to accept. There is no other model in the world that supports this kind of pricing. I mean, Ashish can bear me out on it.
In fact, if anything, it's even worse than what both Dr. Pate and Murali have pointed out. Think of it this way. Say, for example, Uttar Pradesh gets a consignment of vaccines in the month of, or say, for example, the first week of May. Can a person sitting in Maharashtra get some of those vaccines through pilferages? All too possible. Is it possible that it is the case that this person can also buy this vaccine on the private market, maybe as an employee of XYZ firm? So the point I'm trying to make is it's not just the fact that you have different prices for the same vaccine, you have different black market prices for the same vaccines. Because depending upon where you're sourcing that black market vaccine from, you'll have a different range of prices. So it's not just a lack of one nation, one price. It's one nation, multiple prices in both legal and black markets. So the problem, not only do I agree with Murali, I think the problem is a little bit worse than what he's pointing out,
And
because you're going
Ashish,
to have multiple prices.
will what we learned on the first day of economics class, supply and demand, and the fact that as soon as we open this up now, how much ever these vaccine manufacturers can boost in the next 15 days, the truth is it will make the supply problem more acute.
Absolutely. In fact,
and that will lead to more chaos, more pilfering, higher prices in the black market.
Yes. So what little I know, and it is very little, of vaccine manufacturing, I don't think it is going to be possible to dramatically increase the supply over the course of the next 1 week, 2 weeks, whatever it may be. In fact, the other people in the panel are much more qualified than me to speak about this. But the fact that you're going to dramatically increase demand by an order of magnitude that has never ever before been seen in the history of India, while keeping supply relatively constrained over the course of the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, it's going to be a massive, massive problem. And I don't think we're ready for it.
Dr. Rakesh Mishra is sighing very heavily through this whole conversation. Dr. Mishra, the other rule that we've sort of broken in the country is our inoculation programs. And India has had fantastic success with our vaccination programs, but they've always been free vaccination programs. We've broken out of that rule a little bit. Do you think it's valid here? Does it disappoint you that we're going to perhaps wind up, at least in the months of May and June, in more chaos than we are right now?
No, I'm not sure. I mean, that keeping it free. See, we shouldn't compare this with other vaccination programs. Other vaccination programs are only for children or for pregnant women. It's not for massive thing. And any other thing, polio or thing, you can do for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, you keep doing it. Here you want in 2, 3 months entire population. So please think this is something very unusual. This we can't be comparing, and we also can't be comparing with the other drugs because this is one-time usage. I hope after one vaccination we will not need again within a year or two. We need the disaster. So these are very peculiar things about this particular thing that we are talking. So other formula we have to moderate, and that's why I've been meaning to such so dynamic this situation is. One more player comes suddenly decides like mRNA guys enter, and the elite market gets occupied in that, and we keep taking Covaxin and those kinds of things for other. Then many of the things will come and they will play out. And I agree with Dr. Pate that government must be having something. This big decision they can't take just to enter and get a red face next week. I hope they have something under their sleeves, because this means opening everything chaos. And imagine that government centers are empty. There are one vial and 10 people or 20 people in the queue, while 5-star hospitals people are going and taking. I'm imagining that this is a restaurant where there's a AC hall where you can pay 10 rupees for your coffee, and there is a non-AC with fan and you pay 5 rupees, and it depends upon what you want. You go and do it. 5 rupee one will be funded by...
Doc, that's valid if you have unlimited amount of coffee. Yes. But if you only have 5 cups of coffee between the 40 people in these 2 halls, who's going to get it?
There, I think government has to have a rule. They cannot play that big thing, that kind of a gamble, that open everything and let people go, and then people will be paying for 10,000, 20,000 for a zap, because there will be crisis created. That's not good. Then there will be artificial shortage created to extract money. I'm nobody in economics in front of this panel, but I can imagine from a common man's experience that will be chaotic. So I think I only hope that there will be some supply, at least some for the government programs. Otherwise, it will be chaos. And hopefully, this will help the companies to recover a little bit. Unless there is a profit, we are in a.
But I don't understand, Doc. Why can't the government, because Serum Institute asked for 3,000 crore rupees in order to boost his capacity. Again, let's be honest, it's not a lot of money for the government of India. It might seem like a lot of money for you and me. If Bharat Biotech's pricing for the government right now seems unviable, it's not difficult for the same government to open up that pricing, maybe by another 50 rupees per dose or another 100 rupees per dose. Use the PM Cares Fund. That's what it's there for. At least that's what I think. But we've not done that. Instead, what we've done is opened Pandora's box of vaccination.
Yeah, I think, again, I'll be repetitive. I think there should be sufficient stock, and they must be hoping to stabilize that in a couple of weeks, and it should sort it out. Otherwise, if there is going to be real shortage beyond a point, it will be very, very bad. It will lead to problems. I agree.
As we speak, the Prime Minister has started addressing the country live. Just to give you an update of what he has said, he's offered his condolences for people who've lost their family members. He's thanked doctors, medical staff, paramedics, Safai Karmacharis, ambulance drivers, police officials. He has said that we should not lose faith in these tough times. He said that COVID warriors are working day and night. Even though oxygen demand has gone up, they're working very hard to fill the gap and make sure everyone gets oxygen. And we're working on meeting the oxygen demand. That's what he said so far. And I'll give you an update as he speaks further. But going back to our, our conversation, and the question that everybody's asking is rich states versus poor states. And let's be honest, there has been some confusion of politics as well. The Maharashtra government accused the central government of diverting vaccines to to states that are run by the BJP and keeping them away from states that are not run by the BJP. The government has also said that it will work out a system by which it will decide who gets more vaccines from the state governments depending on the priority level. So it is a complicated setup that has been, that's been sort of put in place. But is it likely to lead to an inequitable distribution of vaccine across state governments? Is that a possibility? Murali, do you want to start answering that question?
It's a definite outcome. I don't think we're talking about possibility here. Anybody will tell you that we've seen this gig before. We have scarce commodity. You have somebody who's got authority to distribute in a manner that we don't know how. All of these questions will be asked. It would have been helpful if the government said, here is the criteria on which we're going to distribute our share of 50%. It hasn't said that. If it is going to be, in the words of the minister, dynamic, then we've seen what's happened with dynamic in Maharashtra. In the last few weeks, we've seen the government saying we've got people standing in queues and not getting it. The government saying, oh, of course you have enough supplies, you're not using it properly. So the net result is people aren't getting vaccinated. Now, this is going to get worse when your now supply reduces by 50%. So you had the problem with fair distribution and equity at 100% of the supply. You're going to have at least twice the problem with 50% of the supply. It is going to increase eightfold because you've just doubled the demand. So from 345 million, which was your target for vaccination, you've added almost 700 million more people with 50% less vaccines than you had last month. So, you do the math. We need 1.2 billion doses in the next few months, and we won't have it.
Simply from numbers, is this going to lead to a problem for people who are going in for their second dose?
Well, we'll then have to prioritize, right? So if we had prioritized and said, and that's again back to why you shouldn't have allowed the 18 pluses in until you had got a significant number of the 45 pluses done. Then you would have known, hey, we've got these many done on first dose. So we've got 91 million who've had first doses. We still have a significant number that need to get, 17 million who got first doses, 91 million who will get vaccinated on second dose, hopefully by the end of next month. So once we get prepped for that, if we had some leftover, then we would have gone to the 18 pluses. And we already have situations where I know people who are due for their second doses this week and have been told not to turn up. These are the 60 pluses. I'm not talking about the 45 pluses, with the 60 pluses who are not able to get vaccines today. So you've gone from 60 pluses to 45 pluses, so you've increased the demand. And now you're going to double that. And they need 2 doses, so it's quadrupled. So 4 times half, 8 times the problem.
Dr. Pate, the Prime Minister just announced that a total of 12 crore vaccine doses have been administered up till now. That's the number that he has announced. But do you want to respond to any of the concerns that the rest of the panel have raised?
See, if you just speak of the figures, the important figures will be that we have completed only 8% of the COVID vaccination, number one. Number two, out of which only 1% have completed the 2 dosages. Agreed? Okay. Now, all figures are agreeable and correctly put up, but let me put up the medical perspective, healthcare perspective over here. Whatever may be the situation, what target government of India had put forth or had dreamt of, we achieved nearly 1/4 of that, rather, I will say, what we should have achieved. Now, amidst of that, let us all stalwarts, we are learned people, keep that politics part away. Let them keep on playing the politics. Unfortunately, politics should not be the part of this COVID pandemic management and the vaccination that we have been speaking time and again. Okay, so let us leave it. But very rightly said, the issue being discussed is a supply chain distribution system and how much chaos it is going to be created just because the 50% has been diversified to the states and open market. Now, let us go to step by step. The production is going to be augmented, minimum triplicated, number one. Number two, some amount, at least 4,500 crores has been announced by Prime Minister. Let us hope that it really goes for the production and the production is really augmented. Secondly, as very rightly quoted by you, instead of 250 rupees, just rising 50 or 100 rupees, it should have been made available for every last person of this country. Let me remind you over here, in our latest budget, 35,000 crores were allocated only for the COVID vaccination drive. Now, I understand if this 35,000 crores, if at all, are put up properly, I am sure minimum 75 to 85% of the eligible population will be vaccinated free of cost. Okay. Now here the question is how rationally, ethically, logically, and professionally we divert, utilize the funds in our country. That is the scene over here. So at the end, I will like to mention over here in this thing that the pandemic management, may it be hospital management, may it be management of the healthcare system during pandemic, may it be something regarding the vaccination, it should be handled only by professionals, not by politicians. May it appear a blunt statement, but it is a truth at the end of the day.
That's really a statement that needed to be said, though, because I think that the people of this country are struggling the most with that, the confusion that politics, religion, confusion that they should find absolutely no space in decisions that should be purely scientific at this point, based on data and based on scientific understanding. A quick recap of what the Prime Minister is saying. We want to save lives. I have urged state governments to ensure that migrants stay where they are. Our doctors have become experts in treating the problem. They're saving lives. We have enough PPEs and we have increased testing. That's what's been said so far. We will bring you more updates of what's happening. But effectively, from what I've understood from this panel, what we're pinning our hopes on is that the supply gets increased drastically in a timely fashion. Timely would be as yesterday, actually. That would be a timely fashion, as quickly as possible, in order to meet the demand that's coming in. And perhaps more clarity in communication, because quite honestly, I mean, I spend all my day, my entire day reading government orders and instructions from the government, and I still don't fully understand how this is going to play out. Will the central government continue to vaccinate people between the ages of 18 and 45? We don't really know. I don't have enough fully understood this from this thing. So if anybody wants to just clarify, can we have, is communication also going to be a key here for the government to tell us very clearly how this new sort of structure is going to work?
It was going to be key. I think we've already lost that battle. If anything, I think we're going to see a slew of clarifications the next 2 to 3 weeks. So the battle for communication, I think, has already been lost.
Dr. Mishra?
Uh, I agree, and one of the problem with the communication is that the trust in whatever is said is so little that immediately there will be a contradiction from the other camp, and people are confused now. What is the fact here and what is what? So communication has been a problem because we have been often trying to downplay something, trying to deny something, and numbers. That's why we are not able to come with very good models because the data is not that good that that can be. So lots of these things have come in, but I don't know at this moment suddenly how communication will become transformative, that it will be very different. But yeah,
So you mentioned data, Dr. Mishra. Before I wind this up, I forgot to ask that question. The question about how this vaccine has behaved in this, in the last few months that we've been administering it to the general public. Is there enough data in our country? Because we're hearing about blood clots from other countries. We're hearing about people who have heart attacks 24 hours after they take the second dose. But is there a concrete area where this data has been submitted and made public that we can look at for our own comfort?
not that I'm aware of. I mean, I don't think there are properly large-scale vaccine follow-up programs even in place. We are doing one in our center. We have few hundred people who we got as volunteers, and we are doing it. By and large, vaccines are doing well actually so far. I mean, there some vaccinated people getting infection, all that is common, expected, and we should not exaggerate that. But vaccine follow-up is a long-term study, and I'm not sure that they have been put firmly in place. Most places where I remember, I mean, I know there have been discussions, they've yet to begin actually their programs and put funding and so on. So I don't think so. I don't think there is any domain where a public place where data is put and we can see that. Not really.
Dr. Pate, have there been any instances of blood clots or similar adverse, effects of the vaccine in India?
I have read certain cases definitely, but it is hardly, if you consider the total number of inoculations as compared to that, what adverse reactions what we have read, they are quite minimal. Remember that. But unfortunately, see, we are in this absolutely new disease, the totally new vaccination against the same, and when we come across even a few of the some adversities like this, it becomes a big news. You understand? So those whichever cases of adverse reactions may be there definitely government will be in the procedure to scrutinize those adversaries, and they will definitely come out. There is a committee, I think, which is working on the part of central government, and that part should not be highlighted. That is what my stand over on that.
Okay, I'm going to leave it here because we've run out of time, but obviously this is a matter we're going to have to discuss many times over before we have all of the clarity that we need. Hopefully, we will get that clarity from government, from the vaccine manufacturers, clarity on how much they're manufacturing, what is going to be available at what point. So that step-by-step that they're talking about between now and 70x from now, how is that going to happen? When are they going to make it available? At what price they're going to make it available? Communication would be one way to sort of mitigate the chaos that might come. But hopefully, we will have an increased supply and an increased communication in the days to come. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me and my viewers and answering all of these questions. And I do hope that we can continue to have these conversations as well. Thank you so much for watching. For our viewers, the news is up at 9 o'clock. Of course, the Prime Minister's address is not part of that news because obviously it's still happening, but we'll bring you updates on that when it does end. Thank you for watching.